Silly going to the track, and then they train and do their business, and then they walk home. Shows me that they've got the tools to go to the racetrack and succeed. How much talent they have, I have no idea, but they at least have the tools, the mental tools, to go out there and have a career. They can, you know, if they come home silly, it means they might be just a little bit on the hard side of training, to me. You know, I think also one thing you have to do before they go to a racetrack is, I think it's the farm trainer's job to test them a little bit. And I learned this from my brother. Took a lot of grief in my early career. You have to test them a little bit. You don't want to send a horse to the track and the trainer breeze them a time or two and they come flying apart. You want them to, you know, it's kind of like if you see a horse and he's getting just a little bit of a shin, you know, don't back off of them and baby them and treat them with kid gloves, and then send them on to the trainer. Go ahead, and if you have to stop, then you have to stop. Or if you have to go ahead and do, you know, blister shins, or, you know, if you have to turn them out for a while. But if you go ahead and do it while you've got them there, it'll be much easier on the owner and much easier on the horse. And you'll have a better relationship with the trainer if you've gone ahead and taken care of it now, instead of sending them and then they have to come back. And I'll send you over to the lake.
Okay. They want me to talk about rehab. At WinStar, we get an awful lot of horses coming through there for rehab, all kinds of shape, sizes from every trainer in the country. And I think the key is to, first of all, diagnosis and develop a plan. They all come in, we weigh them, we take a picture, and diagnose. We're lucky in Lexington to have some great clinics close by, some great vets, great technologies. So I think with that, we can diagnose and develop a plan. So that's step number one. I'd say step number two is communication. Like I say, they come from all different trainers. It's good to know kind of the history on, you know, on this horse and any additional problems that he may have. Some things I do see, sometimes it comes in with one problem, but it's got other problems and other issues that maybe somebody didn't see, or it was the original injury was secondary. So the main thing is developing a plan. Normally we get a lot of post-surgery horses. So that's pretty basic, pretty straightforward, starting out with stall rest and then going on to ham walking. I think one thing you'll find with rehab is extremely methodical. You go from one step, if the horse is ready to move on, goes to the next step. And like everybody said, so far, the horse is individual. So you have to treat every horse as an individual case. And I think that's extremely important. I think one thing rehab has really taught me is patience. Not every horse will rehab 100%. And like I mentioned before, communication, not only with the trainers, but also with the owner. And like was previously mentioned, kind of realistic expectations for the horse. So I think that's very important. Most of the time, we like to do post-surgeries in the aquatread. I think the aquatread works very well. We normally start them out after their period of ham walking in the aquatread for 30 days. I find that kind of gets them to the next level. Normally after about 2 weeks, we'll add tack and then tack walk them and then aquatread for the last 2 weeks of the 30 days. Normally after that, they may get a reevaluation, see if they're ready to go to the racetrack, and then onto the racetrack, and same thing, very methodical, starting out with a lot of jogging. If everything looks good, onto the next level, and depending on what the trainer wants or the owner wants, we'll get them to whatever level that they want them back. I think it was interesting mentioning that you got to test them a little bit. Most of the rehabs obviously have some form of injury, so you definitely need to test them to the point where you're comfortable and confident that the horse can continue on to the track without any regression of the previous injury. So I think that's important. Most of ours will get back to breezing, normally up to 3/8, possibly half a mile. Sometimes there's an importance, I guess, on timing, of course, weather, location of the trainer, all things to take into consideration. And timing, you know, is brought into fact when you consider a lot of the rehabs. Should I retire him? Should I continue on? Is it breeding season? Is it a stallion that could retire this year or go for another year? So I think that's very important as to kind of developing this program and to make a decision by a certain date, therefore deciding, you know, retire or go on. A lot of communication, like I said, with the trainer. And like I say, we've seen all kinds of injuries. We're still learning. Great new technologies on the horizon. Things have changed so much. I've been at WinStar 14 years now. Started out in England, came to this country, a little stint in France and Brazil. Seen a lot of ways of training and rehab. And I've seen a lot of change. I mean, it always used to be pull the shoes, turn out, and we'll see it in 3 months. Now, with all the new technologies, like I've mentioned, hyperbarics, and there's a lot of very promising lasers that show great success in, I'd say, tendon, soft tissue injuries. So I think there's change, and I think it's change for the better. And the main thing, like previously mentioned, make sure the horse is good before he returns, and make sure that we're comfortable that the horse can continue on.
Questions, anyone?
Could you address the practice of x-raying the knees in young horses and how much you rely on that as an indicator to whether they're ready to move on to the next level? If the knee's wide open, would you back off automatically, or is that something that you use in regular practice?
The question was, do we x-ray knees before moving on to the next level? I'm assuming you mean before adding in breezing or speed. So we normally, horses that have come from September, say they'll come with their x-rays. So if there's any chips or anything like that, we've already kind of known that going into the training, and we kind of take any, do any surgery or anything like we needed to do at that stage. And any of the homebreds, then we would radiograph knees, ankles, hocks before we start them into training. But typically, if there's no problem, we don't go and X-ray and examine the knees to see if they are fully closed before adding in speed. We at Margaux, and the other guys can answer themselves, but we don't typically add speed into their training until, for the earliest horses, it's really, we don't really add much in until April, maybe March if it's just been a breeze of a winter and everything's gone so smooth. But so at that stage, they are typically, most of the 2-year-olds are quite mature and ready for the speed. But as a policy or protocol, we don't go through and radiograph before adding in any extra work.
That's going to kind of be my answer as well. It's like we don't really look to do it. If there's one we have a question mark about, we might look. Sometimes it's client preference; they'd prefer to have it done. But at the same time, as saying that, like, training helps close down knees. I mean, any form of training strengthens soft tissue. Concussion builds bone. So at the same time, we want to step forward and start breathing. I mean, light speed work, maybe they don't need to be doing as much, but it will close them down. It will harden the animal. It will toughen the bone, and that kind of helps you move on a little bit. Rather than just stopping and waiting around, that constant concussion will help.
On our homebreds, the ones that did not go through a sale, before I started breezing them, I would x-ray their knees to see if they were closed. The ones that we've RNA'd or went through a sale, I just watch them and go at it from that way.
I'd say it's a good guide as to how quickly you can push one forward or move one forward. When I was in Brazil, we x-rayed all the knees, and they really wanted them close to close before they did even early training with them in Brazil. But I think it's a good guide, and sometimes they can fool you a little bit just because going by birth date, sometimes you get one that's born in January that's wide open and vice versa. So I think it's a good guide. I think, just like Matt says, the training is good to continue on, but I think it's a good guide before you increase speed work. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, sesamoiditis has become a big buzzword there. What do you all do with horses that know cases of sesamoiditis? Monitor those as you go along before you move to the next level? Do you ultrasound the dispensaries just to make sure that something doesn't kind of treat those individuals?
Yeah, so sesamoiditis, it is a real problem with horses that have either developed or been bought with sesamoiditis. We'll give them a lot of time and ultrasound them and make sure that everything is in good shape before we even start training. So, I mean, we try and obviously avoid it as much as possible by, our the way we raise the horses and everything going through, but it is definitely, in terms of training, it's one of the most difficult things to kind of to combat without just giving them enough time to fully heal and make sure those sesamoids are in good shape before you start training. Last year, I mean, we had a horse that came out of the September sale, was bought with had some sesamoiditis, and we gave it almost 6 months off before it actually started under tack. And just continually ultrasounding it every 30 days to check where the sesamoiditis was at and how it was progressing, and then brought it into training whenever it was ready. But it's something that needs to be monitored extremely closely. It can be a very serious problem.
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case deal. Some cases are pretty bad, but I'm fortunate enough to work for a lot of veterinarians who are also racehorse owners, and they give me the confidence to be like, no, don't worry about that, just go on. So we'll get them broke, get them riding, teach them where the track is, maybe not do as much galloping, and then just chuck them out for a couple months and forget about it. And I think every vet report that comes in with an envelope from September has sesamoiditis on it somewhere. I mean, it's whatever. It's one of those things, if it's bad enough, yeah, take it into account, give that horse a little extra time. Maybe don't feed it, just keep it a little lighter. It's a little bit easier for them to go, but at the same time, they've got to work, they've got to develop, they've got to do something. But those are the ones that particularly, if you're thinking about giving something some time off in the winter, that's the one. You just give them a couple months off and then start back slow. And if, as it's our job to have our hands on our horses and be checking legs and checking for heat and making sure they're reaching out, they're not short and choppy because they're feeling it or something like that. But I think it's a very case-by-case thing, because a lot of them can, have it, but it never seems to ever stop them or slow them down. And, horses that, go on to be 4 and 5 years old that had a horrible case of it, well, they can't find it then. The horse trained through it. So it kind of...
Yeah, I think it's observing their ankles. I feel like it's probably on the sesamoiditis if you break them and then turn them out for the winter and then start them back in the spring. That's probably how we would handle most of it. But I also think that just observing their ankles, and as long as they're staying nice and tight, I think you can just keep moving forward. I've recently started using the TheraPlate on every horse in the training barn that's had, the 2-year-olds that have sesamoiditis. So we've been putting them on that, and we'll see in a year if that does anything.
And I'd say what would guide you a lot is the degree of sesamoiditis. I'm a big believer in paddock turnout, so if it's fairly severe, probably stop and paddock turnout. If it's light, probably just a little light training, a little jogging with continued paddock turnout would probably heal the sesamoiditis, I'd say, quicker. We've seen a lot of horses normally with I'd say moderate to average sesamoiditis. If you give them the time, they go on to run for quite a few years onwards and never have an issue with it. So I'd say back to the individuality, when to stop, when to give it a little more time, and when to push on.
Seems like, we always, after September, say I would send the horses to Florida. Now we have a lot more options to keep the horses here at facilities like yours. And what's your feelings on training here through the winter?
It's not the perception of training here in the winter is a lot worse than it actually is. It's last year, as bad as it was, we lost maybe a total of 6 training days, which is one of the biggest reasons I always hear coming from owners and say, "Oh no, I'm going to send it to Florida because I don't want to lose any days. I need to get this 2-year-old to the track early." And it's a bit of a misperception that keeping your horse here in Kentucky can't get it to the track early. It's definitely one of the biggest challenges that I know that I have, and I'm sure the other guys do too. That the majority of horses they do either go to Florida or South Carolina or to warmer climates. But I think the facilities that all of our farms have here, coupled with the facilities, the veterinary facilities, the ability that we have to turn them out and keep these horses healthy and just doing fantastic here in the winter. I mean, horses thrive here in the winter, with good hay. They still get plenty out of the grass. They can get out into paddocks and into fields and stretch their legs. It's great for those young horses. They don't need to be cooped up, and I think everybody has mentioned it. We want to keep these horses turned out for as long as possible when they're still in their training, and you've got the ability here to do that in Kentucky with all of the other facilities in the area. And the other thing that I would kind of add to that is it's great for a lot of owners, a lot of agents, other farms are in this area, so it's very easy for you to come out to the farm to see your horse trained, to get keep your eye involved in your own horse when it's on your doorstep, rather than I haven't seen that horse 6 months because it's in Florida and I only go down there every twice during the winter. So for the owners and agents and managers of the horses, I think it's a great benefit and I think that's why you can see the expansion of the training in Kentucky is because of that, because owners and agents can really help to manage and stay on top of their own horses.
I love that question because everybody always asks before they send a horse, and to me it makes me laugh every year, because you have horses that come in that are broke, they train here all winter, horses that come in that get turned out for a few months, you have horses that will train for however long, they can go to Florida and then they come back in the spring, have some to go to the 2-year-old sales, so they take every imaginable avenue after they're broke, and it does not matter. That horse is only going to peak and be ready to run when it's ready. I can give you examples of horses that were standing in 2 feet of snow last year, and again, missed a handful of days. Well, they, ran second or won a race here at Keeneland as a 2-year-old, but that's because that horse could do it. We have other horses that spent all winter training in Florida and came up here in the spring, gave them time, and I'm still training them, and it's next year. So again, it's when that horse is ready. So I mean, there's a brilliant thing for, like we were saying, like turn out, that constant roaming, the remodeling of bone, the stretching of soft tissues, and just the time. I mean, they're a baby. What do they have to be doing at this point? If they're a precocious type, then yeah, that's easy. They can have an easy winter, and it's going to take them that long to come together anyway. A couple sharp works and off they go. the big backward horse that, yeah, that helps them have that winter, that time off to develop and then move forward. But I always, every year it makes me laugh because it doesn't matter what path they take or where they go. You can have one that's been standing there and say we turned it out for 2 or 3 months, started back in March. Well, that thing ran and won at Churchill last year. You know, you just, it's all up to them. So I think that's kind of a, you know, and again, it's not that bad. You gotta be a little tougher. You gotta wear a few more layers, but, you know, get out there and get it done.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, especially the fall and the spring, you know, Kentucky's a great place for the horses, and I think, you know, the majority of the breeders are here, so I think it does a lot of good for the thought that training horses in Kentucky in the winter, fall, winter, and spring is a good idea. You know, I started doing this in 1989, and it wasn't very well thought of to keep horses here in Kentucky in the winter. You know, everybody went to Florida or they went to South Carolina. So, you know, I hats off to these guys that have gotten all these, you know, different clients to want to leave horses here, because I think it's a wonderful thing. It's not that cold and it doesn't last that long, and I think it does a lot of horses a lot of good to be turned out on this grass for a while after you break them. They get, I mean, I just watch the 2-year-olds that we have now grow. You know, we broke them this fall. I stopped riding them right after Thanksgiving, and I moved them to another part of the farm where we're not training, and it's just amazing to see the growth that they have. And we've watched it really close over the years, and the horses that we broke, turned out for the winter and started back training, there's not a huge difference in when they make their first start from the ones that we broke, sent to Florida, and they trained all winter long, and then went straight to a trainer from there. So if you're able to give the horse a little time and be a little patient with him, I think your end goal of when he's going to start the first time is going to be no different. You're going to save some money. So
I think the great benefit staying here in Kentucky really is consistency. Consistency, you can continue turnout, you can have the same rider, same racetrack surface. The horses, I find, continue on very well. I'd probably have a little cutoff to that. I've seen a lot of WinStar horses and outside client horses come through. And I find sometimes I've been able to compare them, you know, in, let's say, April, May, they're up to 3/8, half a mile. And the ones that ship in from Florida, I think, are probably about the same level. And they've done the whole trip south and the trip north and change of this, change of that. And I find that there's no real detriment to that. As long as you're not trying to run maybe in April or pinhook in the March sales down there in Florida. I think if you're looking more of a kind of July onwards kind of campaign, I don't think there's any detriment to that. And we've seen definitely a lot of T-rolls that have stayed here in Kentucky throughout the winter, maybe missed a day or two due to snow, but in my opinion, that doesn't set them back at all.
Well, that's an easy one for me because we don't do any 2-year-old in training sales.
I generally advise everyone who asks me to do that to send them directly to Florida, because as a horseman, you know, whoever's going to be having to pick the sale for that horse, he would like to know that animal from start to finish and know how precocious it is and know all its little quirks going along, to where there's always that little lull in between going from one horseman to the next, to where I tend to advise them to go down or come in, we'll get them broken right and you can see them for a little bit, but get them into their hands. They have to make decisions early on for sale dates and entries and stuff like that, that they need to do that, so they might as well be with them.
when we do sell one as a 2-year-old, sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I'll turn the ones out that we're gonna put into the stable. The ones that we're gonna send to a 2-year-old sale go right on down to Florida from that point. So, yeah, it'd be just a touch different. And if I was bringing them along, a horse that I'm gonna send right to a trainer, I let them start with a slow quarter. And if you were going to a 2-year-old training sale, you'd be going to 16th or an 8th starting off. So
I'd say there's definitely a difference between the, I guess, pinhook and training, 2-year-old and training sales, and basically what we all do. We've run quite a few horses through when they had the sale here in April. And Timonium, I find, like I said before, March is a little tough for us. But I find the training probably is a little bit different. And, you know, a little shorter, sharper, more than the more distance work.
Panelists, and we'll move on to the next. Okay, our last presentation of the day is going to be by Jamie Hayden of the Jockey Club. He's going to give you some information on chip identification and an update on legislative acts.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak here and update the CBA membership on 2 important initiatives we have here at the Jockey Club. The first is going to be starting with foals of 2017. Microchips will become a requirement for registration. Second is a brief update on the Coalition for Horse Racing Integrity, which the CBA joined last September. As announced at the Roundtable Conference last August, the principal rules and requirements of the American Stud Book will now contain microchip requirements for registration for foals of 2017 and later. This requirement will bring U.S. registration in line with other major breeding countries requiring chips as a part of registration. So in advance of the 2017 requirement, we thought we'd tell you about a voluntary opportunity that we think you could microchip foals this year and that serve as an excellent opportunity for education for the 2017 requirement. For foals of 2016, the Jockey Club will provide a free microchip, simply checking the appropriate box at the live foal reporting process. If you'd like to microchip foals of 2015 or in previous years, we can make those chips available for $10. After indicating you would like the free microchip on the live foal report, the chip will be included along with the application, the DNA kit that will be mailed during the second quarter of 2016. So now your application your application kit has now arrived, and included in the kit of the live foal report will contain the Datamars Microfinder Slim Chip. Datamars has been making chips for over 27 years and is now a market leader in Europe and beginning to penetrate the U.S. Datamars has 45 million animals worldwide implanted, including horses, and failure rate on these chips is approximately 150 per 1 million chips. And if the chip fails, just report the number back to the Jockey Club and we'll replace it free of charge for foals of 2016 and forward. But before you ship the foal or horse, there are a few best practices that should be undertaken to ensure a proper implantment. First, the horse should be properly identified and checked for an existing chip with a reader. Second, the microchip that is going to be implanted should be checked with the reader to ensure it is active and readable. Microchips should be implanted by an equine veterinarian or under supervision of a veterinarian. Recommended implementation site is the nuchal ligament left side midway between ear and withers with a 14-gauge needle that will come with the ISO compliant included with the chip. The chip can be read from 9.5 inches away, and with an ISO 11785 compatible scanner, anyone can check the reading. After the microchip has been implanted, please recheck the horse to make sure it is still compatible and still reading implanted successfully. So how do we report? If you're turning in a paper application, you can apply the barcoded sticker in the appropriate box or write the chip number in the appropriate box on the application. Another option will occur during interactive registration when you can submit the chip as part of the process online or through via the mobile app. The microchip number will be imprinted on the front of the registration certificate at the bottom of the marking section for all of those horses' chip. So this is not the last time that you'll be hearing about this initiative. Our staff will be at various meetings throughout 2016 to tell you about the voluntary program and remind you about the 2017 requirement mandating that all foals are chipped for registration. There is also a FAQ on our website at registry.jockeyclub.com, or you can always call Register Rick Bailey or Lori Johnson to assist in microchip identification or registration process in general. So now the next is the Coalition for Horse Racing Integrity. The coalition was formed on May 29th, 2015 with 4 initial members: the Breeders' Cup, the Jockey Club, the United States Humane Society, the Humane Society of the U.S., and the Water, Oats, and Hay Alliance, and its more than 1,000 members. On July 16th, 2015, the Bipartisan Thoroughbred Horse Racing Integrity Act bill was introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives by Representative of Kentucky Andy Barr and by New York Representative Paul Tonko. The act will grant authority for rulemaking, testing, and enforcement of drug and medication use in thoroughbred racing to an entity created by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency. In short, this bill will allow for a single rule book as related to medication use in our racehorses and will also replace the insignificant inconsistencies in standards and enforcement that we now have in the 38 states that permit parimutuel wagering. Since the introduction of the act in July, the list of legislative co-sponsors has grown with 21, with more to follow in the coming weeks and months. At the same time, the coalition, which the Consignors and Commercial Breeders Association joined in September, has grown to 14 members, including Arapahoe Park, Centaur Gaming, the Humane Society Veterinarians, the Jockey Club of Canada, the Kentucky Thoroughbred Association, and Kentucky Thoroughbred Owners and Breeders, and Keeneland Association, our host today. So as you can see, the coalition has gained momentum and traction through social media campaigns to pick up sponsors, and also trade press is also supported, including the Blood Horse, Thoroughbred Daily News, Pollock Report. We've also had key national and regional coverage, including the Wall Street Journal, ESPN, the New York Times, and even the home paper, the Herald Leader. And coalition members have authored numerous editorials and submitted those in key racing markets or in media outlets where they call home to bring attention